Hey guys, my name is Walden, and I just crossed the 2-year mark studying Japanese every single day. And when I was first starting out, I got a ton of inspiration from people who shared their journey in learning Japanese on the internet, on YouTube. And so I want to kind of make a video showing about my progress over these last 2 years. And spoiler alert, I think I did really well this year. Very excited to get into all of this. So come along with me and take a little reflection on my 2 years of Japanese. So I actually did a video last year at about the 1,200 hour mark after my first year learning Japanese. And as I said in that video, I'm not making a tutorial on how to learn Japanese. I mostly want to talk about my personal experiences. But if you do want to learn Japanese, I'm going to link in the description the Moe Japanese learning community, because I've gotten a lot of my personal thoughts from that community. So I really recommend it. Please check it out if you want more details about all of this stuff. So I think I want to lead off with what I think my level is right now in Japanese. I think probably a lot of people are going to be very interested in this. So what does 2 years get you? I've studied about 3 to 4 hours a day, every single day. And when I think about skill in Japanese, I can't just say like I'm X good. Like it doesn't really make any sense, right? There's kind of 4 main categories I think about. And at this point, I practiced every single one a fair bit. First of all, listening. This is watching videos, listening to podcasts or whatever. There still are plenty of times where things come up, I don't really know what they mean, but especially if I can pause, I can reflect and look up some words or something, I can usually figure out what's going on. Yeah, podcasts still feel really difficult, especially if topics are changing quickly or I'm not really sure what's going on. But normal everyday conversations feel super easy at this point. Especially the type of videos I typically watch feel really easy. So yeah, I'm feeling very strong in listening for sure. Reading, I'm still very slow at reading, but honestly at this point, I've been reading this book right here, little light novel here. I'm about 80% of the way through it, reading it in the real world, and I can do it. I mean, there's some times where I've been lost, like even now. I'm gonna give reading a pass. Like I can read things. But yeah, it's so slow, man. It's so slow. So speaking, I think definitely you were further down in the ability list for me. I'm definitely conversational. I've done a lot of italki lessons, as I'll get into later. I feel like normal everyday conversations or topics I'm familiar with, I'm very comfortable talking in Japanese. Now, as soon as I break out of that, I kind of like just fail and stumble, and of course that happens. Like when I was in Japan, I was able to deal with, like I had a problem at a hotel, I was able to deal with it and, you know, maybe have some conversations with people. So I'm going to give speaking a pass too, although it is very much something that needs to be worked on a lot. Like I don't think I could do business conversations or things like that. And then writing, I think of as the last category. Now, I've never practiced writing by hand on paper besides like hiragana at the very start, but I'm pretty comfortable writing text messages or essays. I feel like writing is at a higher level than speaking for me, just because with writing, you can go at your own pace, look up words and stuff and kind of think about things a lot more. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, how do I even begin to describe what my level is? It's just very difficult. But I can tell you, compared to my last video, I had not practiced speaking or writing at all. So like those were just zeros straight up. And when I eventually did speak for the first time, it was like I was just a total beginner, you know, even though I had done all of this immersion. So certainly in order to get good at every single category, you've got to practice every single category a lot. Do I feel fluent? Man, I don't really feel fluent. And kind of it's kind of this weird thing where I feel really confident with Japanese, but I don't feel able to express anything that comes to my mind. Like I still feel like I'm locked down certain pathways that I've studied or I practiced. Yeah, man, I'm really proud of the last year of work I've put in and what it's done, because I don't think a lot of people make it this far, just to be frank. And I don't know, I think that kind of gets into what my next topic is, which is, I wrote this down, how to learn Japanese, just make it fun. And I wrote down a lot of different things I did this year that, you know, I don't think most people would consider studying, but I really consider every single one of these things to be studying, which is going and experiencing Japanese as a language, and then from that, you actually do the studying. So for example, the first point I have is GeoGuessr. And GeoGuessr, I mean, is that studying Japanese? I don't know, but I will tell you, going around in GeoGuessr, like playing the Japan map, like reading signs and stuff, making flashcards from signs and understanding geography. I actually did a whole flashcard deck in Anki about memorizing all of the 47 Japanese prefectures and capital cities, and that deck has actually made a lot more difference to my comprehension than I ever would have thought, because like when you're hearing people doing everyday conversations, places come up a lot. Like places are really important. Just memorizing the names of all of the prefectures made me able to comprehend a lot more things, because people say, oh, I went to this place. Oh, I know where that is. That's like, you know, West Japan or whatever. And now I just know that, which is kind of like my idea of exposing yourself to a lot of different things. It may not seem like studying, but as long as you're exposing yourself in the language and to the culture, it actually all adds up. So the next thing I wrote was I spent like 4 or 5 hours practicing how to do flick typing on the phone, which like, that doesn't seem like studying, right? But what actually happened after I was able to do that was I started using my phone in Japanese more often. I was doing like more Google searches in Japanese, where I would just like, oh, just type a couple words. I wanted to look up something. Why don't I just do it in Japanese, right? Like now I'm experiencing that language more because I'm able to type in Japanese way better on my phone than before. Because before I was like, every single character, I just didn't know where anything was, right? Yeah, I played some games in Japanese, and we'll get into my time tracking later, but when I played games, I didn't even track it at all because it doesn't feel like studying. But just getting to experience games in Japanese, I'm still practicing reading, I'm looking up words, I'm solving problems in Japanese where like the game presents me some kind of puzzle or something, and some character said some sentence that was part of the solution. And if I didn't understand it, I just didn't understand it. And so I have to go back and read what they said and reinterpret it, and all that stuff is great. I also just got back traveling to Japan. I went for the first time in March, actually right on my 2-year anniversary of studying Japanese, and that was just an amazing experience. You know, going into the country for real after studying for so long. I love just like walking around and taking pictures of signs and stuff, and going back home now that I'm back home and making flashcards out of all of it. Like, I've just learned to have so much fun studying that it doesn't even feel like any work to me. If you're learning Japanese, or like anything that's just a massive learning project, and you don't have like so many different things that make you excited about it, then it's just going to be really difficult to do the amount of work that it takes to push through this. If you're trying to learn Japanese as well, you know, I would encourage you to think about what are the things that you want to do in Japanese, and what are the things that make you excited to learn, and try to find out how you can do those things no matter what your level is. Even if you're a beginner, how can you try to interact with those things at your own level? I haven't been very concrete up until this point, but from here on out, I want to get into some of my data. So I've actually been, for the entirety of this 2-year period, tracking my hours learning Japanese using an app called Toggle. And unfortunately, the app does not let you do more than 1 year at a time. So I put together this little spreadsheet that goes over my different categories. And what I want to do is talk about each of these categories one by one. So I did say I've been doing this for 2 years, but there's actually 4 years listed here. So let's figure out what the hell is going on, right? So yeah, in 2020, I actually started right when COVID hit. I found Japanese from Zero, which is a textbook series by George Trombley, and I really kind of fell in love with it. Japanese seemed so cool, and I was learning a lot, but I ended up dropping it. I had other stuff in my life come up. I didn't know if I really wanted to commit to this. Eventually, about a year later, March of 2021 hit. I decided, you know what? I've been thinking about Japanese a lot, even though I wasn't studying, and I decided I was going to start over, redo it for real this time, and I wanted to use the immersion approach, which I hadn't used at all before. So that's why I put 100 hours in JFZ category. I don't even know if it was 100. It might be a little exaggerating there. Like, it wasn't a lot. Going into it again, I was really familiar with what I had to do. Like, I had been researching about immersion, and I had kind of gotten involved in the learning community, understood what this really was this time. And so when I was going into it again, I was mentally prepared for how much work this goddamn thing was going to be. And goddamn, it was a lot of work. So first, we've got to talk about listening, right? Listening is my personal bread and butter of immersion. I did about 1,780 hours, which is, man, it's just quite a lot when you look at it on a chart like that. Listening is a lot of different things for a lot of different people. For me, primarily, that's been YouTube. I have watched some anime, TV shows, but nothing compares to the volume of YouTube I watch. Like typically, like 2 or 3 hours a day, I'm watching Japanese YouTube. Maybe when you think about studying Japanese, you get this image of reading textbooks or like doing flashcards or something. And of course I do those things, but I think about watching YouTube because while I watch YouTube, I'm actually doing something very specific, which is focusing very hard. When people say things I don't quite understand, like I pause, I look up a word, maybe I go back a little bit and try to rewatch some certain sections. This is a very active process. When I talk about YouTube this year, I'm mostly talking about Kun and Gojunin Crafto. So this is my absolute favorite thing right now. This guy is a maniac. He posts every single day on 4 different channels, and I watch like most of it. It's quite insane at this point. So it's pretty difficult to describe. It's almost like a Minecraft reality show. Like there's all these different people on the server. It's like ostensibly it's 50 people, but there's actually more like 100, 200 people that come in and out. But you kind of get to know this cast of characters, and there's more talky types of videos, chat types of videos. There's of course the gaming types of videos where they do like Minecraft videos or actually play other games on the Neat channel. And what I've really come to like about this channel from a language perspective is because there's all of these different types of videos, you get exposure to reading where people write these giant chat messages and you want to understand the story that they're trying to convey. Or there's like a gaming video where it's just fun and you're just hanging out. And all throughout it, since all these people come back again and again, you get to know the characters, the jokes. Of course, I watch other types of videos too, but it's kind of hard for me to believe I didn't know about Kun at all my first year because it's been so like vital to my Japanese learning this last year. Yeah, so much fun. I hope a lot of other Japanese learners out there can find something as compelling as this is for me, for sure. Up next is reading. So I did about 320 hours of reading, and reading's been the most difficult thing for me to crack. I've dabbled in so many different types of reading. Like I've done manga, novels, games, like I said before, visual novels I've tried, and then like random internet articles, news posts, programming tutorials. Like I've read a lot of different types of stuff, and throughout all of it, I find it very hard for me personally to focus on reading for like long periods of time. And like, even if I enjoy the material a lot, I find it difficult to come back to reading. And like, here's a book I read. This is like a Minecraft Redstone book, which is hilarious. And like this thing was great. I read this, honestly, like about a year ago at this point. I certainly do feel a lot more competent in reading, and I'm able to follow like a story a lot more than I was able to do before. Like when I was reading this novel here, there's just so many words I still don't know that actually really interfere with like the story. It's not like random adjectives you don't know in English or things like that. It's like actually important words that I'm still missing. And of course, I know I'll pick them up over time, but it just kind of goes to show like how much reading is really required to get good at reading. And at the point where you're not there yet, reading is still kind of a chore a lot of the time for me. When I was really having fun reading, I felt giant improvements. And that kind of proves to me that if I can just do this like another 500 hours or so, I'm going to get amazing at reading. And I hope I'll get there at some point for sure. So let's talk about Anki now. It's a miracle. Anki has been exactly 320 hours as well. I really don't know how that happened. But yeah, if you don't know what Anki is, it's a flashcard program that I've used to study Japanese vocab and grammar. There are so many different ways you can use Anki to study Japanese, but I just want to talk about what I've done personally. And for me, my goal has been to keep Anki to around 30 minutes a day. I've seen a lot of people who go multiple hours a day with Anki, and you can totally do that. But for me, I wanted to focus on immersion as the main bulk of my studying. So over time, I've actually adjusted how many new words I learn per day in order to keep that 30 minutes constant. So at the start, I did pre-made decks, which are like lists of words made by other people. Especially starting out at the beginning, it's very hard to remember new words, and I was doing like 10 cards a day, 5 cards a day sometimes. I did about 3,000 cards or so with pre-made decks before I switched to sentence mining, which is what I'm doing to this day. Sentence mining basically is you're out in the world, you're doing listening, you're doing reading, and you see a word that you don't know that you want to study. And there are various programs you can use like Yomi-chan, and actually I've written some custom scripts that help me create cards as well. And you can add those cards into Anki and then study them later. And so I have about 8,600 learned cards in total across all of my decks and 5,600 cards in my mining deck. At the moment, I'm able to do 20 new cards per day without going over 30 minutes, which kind of shows that at the intermediate level, new words get easier and easier to learn. Looking at my retention rate, I've got a 77% one-year retention rate, which means that of cards that I've matured in the Anki system, 77% of the time I remember it, and 23% of the time I don't. I'll also note I have 400 suspended cards from leeches in my mining deck, which I kind of think is a lot now that I look at it in retrospect. But, you know, if you think about it in another way, like those are all words that I actually have a fair bit of experience studying. So if I see them in the wild, I've actually noticed, oh, I know that word. I would look at it in my Anki deck and it was actually suspended. So like I quote unquote failed to study it. But no, all that stuff still adds up. So maybe add another 400 to my count if you want to. Grammar. So I have 46 hours tracked studying grammar. Yeah, the studying grammar is really like time when I'm only studying grammar. I think like the reality is more of as I'm doing listening and reading, if there's grammar I don't understand, I would strive to, while I'm in the moment in the content, looking up that grammar point and trying to understand the sentence in context. I would do these randomly, these short grammar study sessions, usually like 30 to 45 minutes a day when I would do them. And I would try to learn, you know, maybe 10 grammar points or something. When eventually I was able to study grammar in Japanese itself is when I really started to not hate it. Before I hated doing it in English. And I enjoyed using this YouTube channel called Deguchi Nichigo, which is a Japanese guy. He's actually teaching to Taiwanese students. So the earlier lessons, N5 and N4 grammar points, are all in Chinese, but N3 and above are in Japanese only. And I found those awesome grammar material. Because if you think about like an English-based grammar video has like an English crutch to it, but this is a Chinese crutch, and I don't know Chinese. So his random Chinese stuff all over the screen isn't impacting my ability to process the Japanese. And so I found that super valuable. And also he's like such a chill sensei, and he sometimes there's some funny parts in there, which I've come to like for what it is. The Anki deck I mentioned earlier is basically a scrape of the Nihongo Kyoshi website. I started this deck in the second year, by the way, so I went through all of N5 and N4 again in Japanese to see if I had missed some stuff, and goddamn, I missed some stuff. Like, for real. I was kind of shocked at how I had done so much, and I still wasn't quite 100% on my N5 and N4 stuff. And then I continued on into N3 and N2, and I'm kind of about halfway through N1 right now, which is where I'm at. But like, yeah, at the start of this year though, I made a big push to get N2 grammar points all finished. And I was kind of shocked that I was still missing so many critical things. Like tsutsu are or sai areba, I just like didn't know. There was no reason I couldn't have studied that like a year ago and figured it out. I mean, they're not that hard. I think that just goes to show me like, if I would have been more on top studying grammar the first year, I would have gotten so much further in overall comprehension. Like certainly words has been fairly linear for me and linear for like pretty much everyone. But if you can understand messages sooner, then that really snowballs you because you start to understand more of the language all at once instead of like piecemeal. In the last like month or so, I've just felt like grammar has not been a problem at all for me. Like it's all word choice, like really long sentences that just get difficult to parse. But it's not because I don't know the grammar. It's because like it's not ingrained in me enough to fit all of the parts together. all of the parts I feel like I understand for the most part. And that's something that hasn't happened to me before until like right now. I would give myself like a D for how I've done with grammar over my whole journey. But you know what? If in the end you do the grammar, you will make it, you know? So, and that's kind of the way I've done it for myself. I ended the last video saying I probably wouldn't output at all in 2022. And I'm very happy I was wrong there. Actually, a couple months later in March of 2022, I started doing weekly italki lessons. And this has been so valuable for my overall Japanese ability. Like, I can't speak highly enough of it. I went from literally not being able to speak to, at this point, I would consider myself undeniably conversationally fluent. Back to my theory about making it fun, I really got a kick out of preparing all kinds of random stuff for my teachers. I prepped a bunch of essays to go over together and do like correction, but the topics were really weird. Like I did one on COVID entry requirements in Japan and definitions of Japanese gaming slang, which my teacher absolutely did not know, by the way. Because like, why would you, you know, if you're not a gamer? By the way, you can see some of that stuff on my website if you want to laugh at my terrible Japanese. The italki sessions, you make what you put into it. As soon as I started speaking, parts of my Japanese got cleared up when I was forced to put it into practice and realize how much I don't know. Like, just when the first session I started speaking, I was flubbing basic like verb conjugations, and I just realized like I didn't have it fully internalized, and I had to go back and study it. And that stuff, when you realize you actually don't know stuff completely, to be able to use it in a real sentence to a real person, that pushes you to have a reason to go and fully understand the stuff, because you can get surprisingly far just listening and understand the meaning without actually having knowledge of everything that's happening. So I have like 50 hours tracked in something called workflow and coding. This is kind of like catch-all categories for working on learning Japanese at a meta level. I did do a bunch of coding as a programmer myself, writing like scripts for Anki or like stuff to help me make flashcards. The idea of tracking it was just to make sure that I wasn't spending all of my time trying to research the best method to learn Japanese, because that is a very easy trap that beginners can get into. There's hundreds of textbooks on Amazon about how to learn Japanese, and people will just buy the first book in like 10 different series and then do all of them, and you never make it past first book material in anything. I think it's really important to make sure that you don't spend all of your time trying to learn how to learn Japanese, but actually push forward past that and learn it, even if you know that you might not be using the most optimal methods, which goddamn, I certainly did not. So yeah, that's the end of the categories, except it's not. There's another category not listed, which is exercise. And you may notice if you watched my previous video, I've actually lost 65 pounds. Start of 2022, I was 230 and now I'm 165. So quite a big success there. I actually personally consider exercising and working on my health to be equivalent to studying Japanese. The theory is if I improve my health, then I'll be able to improve my focus. I'll be able to study Japanese better. I really knew once I was getting over 220 that I had to make some changes in my life. And primarily I cut out sodas. I reduced the amount of fast food I eat. I also started walking every day. And those are the three things I did basically to get me down to this point over the last year. I actually incorporated Japanese into my exercise because a lot of times when I'm walking, I'll have my phone out and I'm doing my flashcards on my phone to like do a 2-in-1 there, which unironically makes both activities more fun because Anki kind of has a bit of adrenaline when you're walking and trying not to trip over sidewalks and stuff. I treated this very seriously. I wanted to make sure I was doing exercise every single day and that it was equivalent to Anki for me, which is just something I need to keep on the grind for, because if not, I'm not going to be able to study Japanese. I was having a lot of trouble focusing at that time when I started to make these changes. And I think I've really improved my ability to focus for sure. So let's finish up today with what my goals for Japanese are going forward. I do feel like I've hit this level of competency in the language where if I wanted to, I could just stop learning and I would be fine. Like I can watch videos, I can read, and of course while I'm doing that, I would still look up words and still try to continue to improve, but not like at a consistent level. Which is why going forward, I've actually stopped time tracking. And believe it or not, I've already stopped completely. The last time I tracked my time was right before I got on the plane to go to Japan. And that's my 2-year mark. And I decided I wouldn't track any more time from there. So that's kind of one way that I'm starting to wean off of this mindset of studying Japanese. But there are some concrete goals which I do want to achieve over the next year. So first of all, I want to finish N1 grammar. Grammar is pretty limited overall. Like there are only like a few hundred grammar points. So it is completable. And I want to complete it and kind of have it checked off, which leads into my second thing I want to do, which is pass the N1 for real. Right now, I don't think I could do it, but I think if I read a lot over the next 6 months or so, and then of course, study up the grammar, I think I can do it. So I will have that as a goal for me. I also have a goal that I want to make videos in Japanese. Certainly I could do this now if I wrote a script, but I don't feel comfortable to do a video in Japanese unscripted. I've actually tried like 3 or 4 times and they've been disasters. 今日はシンプル企画の方がいいと思う。日本語のせいで。I don't know what that looks like for me, but I like making videos, and having done so much on Japanese YouTube, consuming it, I really want to make Japanese videos. Like, man, I want to do that. And hopefully I'll get to do it soon. So next is I want to hit 10,000 mind cards. So like I said, I'm at 8,600 total, but my mind cards is 5,600, and I've got a long way to go to get to 10,000. I feel like that's kind of like at the point where words, at least common words, stop being an issue. Everyone has their own set of vocab in their native language that's different than everybody else's. And once you kind of get to that 10,000 point, I feel like you start to get that sense for yourself as well. So I hope to do all those things over the next year. But man, I mean, I'm just so proud of myself for how far I've gotten. And I think it's important to say that because, you know, there are a lot of reasons that I could go and compare myself to other people who are much, much better than me. And of course, who have also put in much more time than me. But I think the reality is that, you know, anybody who's gotten as far as I've gotten has something to genuinely be really proud of. And I don't spend a lot of time acknowledging that to myself. So I think it's important in a video like this at a 2-year mark of really putting my whole life into this to say like, you know what, I kind of did it. And that's an incredible thing. For those of you at home who are also at a similar level, I hope that, you know, in all the struggles and not understanding, that sometimes you take a look at yourself and say, you know what, I've also done this too. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.
話したいことが少しでも胸の中にもし潜んでるなら無理して言う必要もないけどいつでも受け止めるからさ一人で戦う姿には特別な敬意を払うけど日陰がないと休めないだろう水がないと
Was that a video? Was that